Hello, friends, and welcome to our latest webinar. This is Agility CMS with FormStack and how to optimize automation with Agility CMS and FormStack. And I'm delighted to be joined today by my good friend, Zach Pines, who is VP of Partnerships at FormStack. My name is Joel Vardy. I'm CTO here at Agility. Zach, welcome to the webinar. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Joel. Love that you guys do this webinar series. Thrilled to be participating today. I've got 20 years in SaaS experience, and partners are a key part of our growth strategy. Great to dive into it with you here today, Joel.
All right, let's get right to the content. So the agenda for today, we're going to talk a little bit about what is composable architecture and just review that a little bit to understand sort of the pieces that make up that architecture. We'll talk about optimizing your workflow, increasing your productivity from your team. How do we keep it secure? And then how do you get started? That's the sort of 5 seconds in the agenda. And then Zach's going to actually, as we go through and at the end, tell us a little bit more about FormStack and the capabilities of the platform and some of the benefits. So pretty exciting agenda, lots to get to it. We're aiming to be about 20 or 30 minutes of content. So let's do it. Right off the top, composable architecture is something that we've talked about on this webinar series. Is this a term that actually comes up with you guys at FormStack very much, Zach?
Look, Joel, I got to admit, when you shared this with me, when we met a few months back, I was intrigued by it. I knew what you meant by it. But no, it's not. For me, this is not something that's day-to-day in conversation. So very interesting to see your perspective.
Sure.
It definitely resonates and makes a lot of sense. But you taught this one to me.
Yeah. Well, composable is a kind of a term that it came about 3 years ago. Gartner started using it in terms of composable as opposed to like big monolithic suite platforms. And what I love about composable architectures is that you can pick and choose the best tools that are going to be right for your business at that time. It's services based, so you can pick independent services that can kind of work together to solve your goals. You can pick what you need. It can grow with you. So maybe you started off when your business was really small and you have some like really small different things, different services that you're using. And as you grow, you probably want to grow into maybe a little bit more enterprise type of service. And it can really scale with your business and stay secure.
Yeah. So I'm hearing, best of breed, modularity as some key themes.
Yeah. And when I think of a composable architecture, I always put headless CMS in the middle, just because I build Agility CMS, and but any CMS can go in the middle, and any one of these kind of different things can kind of work around. And there can be many more, and you don't have to have all of these things to have a composable architecture. We're really going to be focusing on headless CMS and form capture today, and all of the different parts that tends to affect. Even though FormStack does more than just form capture. That's the kind of the use case that I think we're going to focus on. So if we look at this from my perspective, and I may be oversimplifying this, so I'm going to let you jump in a second, Zach. But from my perspective, when folks want to be able to capture data from their website, they want to be able to use the headless CMS to say, hey, what page do I want these forms to go on, or where's my call to action at the bottom that's going to capture some conversion information. Usually they want that information to maybe go to a marketing automation system, which then goes to CRM. And in some cases, it could be, in this case, we're talking about Agility CMS, FormStack. Maybe the marketing automation is something like, MailChimp, and maybe your CRM is Salesforce. And in a lot of cases, most folks actually just want to send their data from their website directly into Salesforce.
Yep.
This is a pretty simplified use case, but I think it's fairly common. Am I right in saying that, Zach?
Yes, I think certainly the form is where that data capture starts. You're right that in our world, we would think about kind of other touch points. I'll give you an example. You bring a lead off the website. That's your first touch point. But where FormStack will kind of continue that chain is, recurring data capture from that individual who might be a prospect, might be a customer. So it's a continuous process from there. Which could be further website interactions. It could be other touch points. And then we'll talk more about, again, where FormStack's evolved is, more than just that touch point. So maybe it's a process where further downstream, there's a document that's generated. Maybe there's a digital signature that needs to be captured tied to that document. Any kind of customer enrollment process, any kind of customer or client or patient or student onboarding process. So that's where FormStack will kind of get deeper and deeper into the business process. But that website and form interaction is where, yeah, our softwares are going to kind of marry up and typically be the start of that customer journey.
Right. So when we're looking at, you know, how this can benefit your business, the biggest thing is now you have ability to, you know, obviously with headless CMS, you can get content and create pages on your website and things like landing pages very, very easily. And you can design your forms in FormStack, and we'll kind of walk you through that in a minute. But the idea is you can build your forms without having to use a developer and then put those on your website. Again, no developers needed. So this is like, there's no code involved, and you can basically increase your conversion rates and sort of get more rhythm from your marketing team in terms of capturing more data from more customers. And then, as Zach was saying, that data becomes even more valuable when it's in a system like FormStack. So that's pretty cool stuff. Let's continue on and talk about workflow a little bit. Talked a little bit about conversion process. So one of the things that I think is really important is just going through that workflow, like you were just talking about, Zach, about, you know, hey, it could be a contact us form, and then maybe that, you know, as you work with that customer and they move through your sales funnel or whatever it is, and they become a real customer, what does that conversion process look like? And I think it's really important. And Zach, when you work with customers, do you actually help them build these processes?
You know, first thing I'd point out, Joel, and it also is kind of my other hat, right? So FormStack, two types of partners: technology partners, but also a phenomenal ecosystem of consulting firms, SIs, agencies, often specialized by vertical.
Right.
Knowing the use cases, knowing the practice. So customers, a lot of value from FormStack in that no code, do it yourself. We have many customers that go that way. And then when customers are looking for that expertise, that's where our partner community adds a ton of value every day.
Right. Cool. And then we look at components. And this is where, no, I'm not talking visual components. I'm talking business level components of like, hey, if I'm capturing data with FormStack, and if I have this contact data there, or whatever's been captured as part of the conversion process, where's that going to go to in terms of, you know, maybe it's a CRM, maybe it's marketing automation, and how is that going to work with either a tool that you currently have, or I would suggest, Zach, that you probably work with customers as in, well, if you don't have a CRM, or if your CRM isn't working for you, then you might want to work, you know, adjust your processes a little bit like this. And that's probably going to be specific to the vertical that you have, correct?
Oh, for sure. That's right, Joel.
Yeah. And then we look at, and this is where, especially from the CMS point of view, this is where Agility really likes to get deeply involved, is what's the editor process in terms of deciding where on the website these contact points are going to come in. Is it just a contact us page? Is it calls to action at the bottom of every single blog post that you have? Is it, you know, are you trying to optimize so that, you know, you'll get one level of conversion at one piece of content, and then the customer's journey will continue on through more content to get deeper and to capture potentially more information from that same customer. So going through that part of the process and seeing how that works with the conversion process is something that we would work with customers to do. And then obviously it's really important to test these processes to make sure that on an ongoing basis that they're still working as you had designed them, because they can get pretty complex. And sometimes you kind of forget how it was meant to be in the initial set. So it's important to come back and, you know, regularly make sure that things are working smoothly, not just at the beginning. Is this something that you work with too, Zach, where it's like, you know, sometimes it can be like a lot of different components that are working together and not necessarily everyone knows how it was supposed to work?
Oh yeah. I mean, again, the themes here are agility, you know, able to make changes, able to test. There's a FormStack module called Conversion Kit that those interested in this topic should check out. But yeah, you're hitting all the right notes, Joel.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So we definitely want to optimize workflow, and it's certainly something where there's a consultative process here, both with Agility and with FormStack, that, you know, we can help you work through this, or with the partners that you might be working with to help those vendors actually working for them too. The whole idea here is to increase your team's productivity. One of the most common requests that I hear from marketing teams is to more easily create these pages, create contact forms, create things like downloadable content without needing a developer. Now, sometimes you need a developer to get all those in place so that your marketing team can have that fast rhythm to create those things. But I really like to think of it as we want easier workflow. We want to power up your pipeline, and we want you to be able to evolve that faster. And those are the kind of things that were, I think, in successful setups that I've seen. And I actually think of another one. Genesis Energy is a company that we just onboarded in New Zealand, and they're using FormStack. And I think that they would definitely say that, 1, 2, 3, these things are happening for them. Is this something that you see, Zach, in terms of increasing productivity? And do you find that people are creating a lot more kinds of ways to get conversions from their customers when you have increased rhythm from a marketing team?
Yeah, I mean, I think about it as, distributing, enabling a broader team. So if you take something like data capture, I know, in my world, being part of the partner team, like every day, right, there's a new idea, there's some activity. Oh, it'd be great to have a way to capture that information. And in the old days, you'd be beholden to a developer. Don't want to be beholden to a developer. Want to kind of enable, let's call it, the front lines, the people that, need the information to be able to do it now. So I want to be able to create a form. I want instant gratification. I want to do that without having to, of course, write code. Yeah, that's all part of how FormStack adds value and part of our joint value to any customer, like Genesis Energy. Yeah,
I'm thinking of some of the stuff that the folks at that team talked to us about, and even at the Agility team. One of the things that it could come up with, like, ooh, we have the contact us form, and we're not asking for company name. Let's try asking for company name for a while and see if that changes things. Or let's not allow Gmail addresses and see if we get more company emails, and just testing out these different things. That's something that's, where those ideas, I think that's what you're kind of referring to, Zach, is those kind of like brainstorming type ideas. You can just do it, test it, and then react to it very quickly. Again, don't need to have a developer. And I think that almost always, not only do you feel more productive, but you're able to actually action things, take, as opposed to just kind of getting stuck in the ideation process.
Yeah. Okay. Good example.
Let's talk about security and compliance for a second. And there's a bunch of different things here that are really, really important. And I think when I see things like HIPAA, I get a little nervous. And I think this is a really big piece of understanding how, especially composable systems, where there's multiple pieces working together, multiple backends where your data is going to be. It's important to understand what needs to be compliant and how your vendors are helping you. Agility, if you look at the top right, Agility is SOC 2 Type 2 compliant as an organization, and that's sort of something we go through every year. We do pen tests, stuff like that. But Agility doesn't capture your data. When you're working with something like FormStack, FormStack is the one that's actually capturing the data, right? And Zach, do you find that customers sort of understand that really well and understand how FormStack is doing, its own commitment to things like HIPAA compliance?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, first of all, Joel, healthcare is FormStack's #1 vertical, and our HIPAA compliance is a big reason for that. If I'm a healthcare marketer, being able to do what we're talking about is a game changer, because probably in the past, like not having a HIPAA compliant form builder, I've had to jump through way more hoops. And, I meet some of our customers, healthcare marketers, and like FormStack has like literally changed their job in a really positive way, because it's enabling them to do things they couldn't do before, because we can have that compliant stamp of approval and deliver all the things that we've been talking about. FormStack gives you different ways to address the issue as well. Meaning, like, let's say I capture data in FormStack, that data can be encrypted. You can store it in an encrypted manner. You can turn off storage. Like, if you want to purely use FormStack as a conduit and your compliance team says, I don't want the data stored in FormStack, even that is possible. So different ways to approach it, but always in a way that's going to kind of address the compliance requirements, but also deliver on everything else we've talked about for the past 15 minutes around enablement, agility, and no code.
That's really interesting, though, to think about. So FormStack handles compliance in sort of in terms of like how it processes the data that's being captured and sent through the system. And you have the ability to, if it's not, to actually store that data and determine sort of how it's stored, and if there's, secure information or there's personal information that's in there, to encrypt that if needed. But then it could be that, an IT team says, oh, you can capture data on the website, but it can only ever live in our backend that we've got. It's, it could be some custom thing. FormStack could be used just to route that data through and maintain a level of compliance. Is that the kind of the use case?
That's right. And if there's any FormStack customers or prospects looking at FormStack out there, that's just a setting in your FormStack account to turn off data storage if that's the requirement.
Right. And so this is really cool because it means that as a marketer, we can do the things that we were talking about on the earlier slide without having, being, shut down by essentially an IT team who's worried about stuff that they should be worried about in terms of security and compliance. So it really does enable you to still maintain that level of productivity without having to slow down. So that's really exciting. Pretty cool stuff. And I know that talking about this personally, I know that from our enterprise customers, it's one of those things where a personal discussion can go a long way, a phone call, as opposed to like, we often get like an Excel sheet with a whole bunch of like check marks and things like that, which I'm not sure that goes very far to actually observing the commitment to security and compliance that there is, but a personal phone call can really help. So that's something that we always encourage. Okay. How do you get started with this? And this is where we kind of get into some of the nitty gritty. First thing is, like, go ahead and create some accounts. So like you can create an Agility account for free to test out all of the features of Agility. So agilitymess.com/starters has a whole bunch of different trial options that you can go through. Actually just kind of play around with it. There's no commitment. You can just kind of mess around. And FormStack has the same thing. So you can get started for free with FormStack and actually start building forms. And I think that's probably a big part of your process, Zach, where customers come to you, it's like, hey, I've tried out the system. Now I have these questions and now I want to get started. Is that usually what the process is for folks evaluating FormStack?
Yeah, it's a simple get started on the website. Also, it's even more than that. We have a bunch of form templates you can choose from. So you can choose based on your industry, what do you want to use as a starting point? You could have a form that you're using literally in seconds once you get that FormStack account set up.
Awesome. Then the cool thing is there's already a pre-built way, we call it an app, to actually install FormStack forms into your Agility instance so you can put them on your website. Nice. And as I said before, there is some configuration to get that going. That's where we tend to work with customers, hey, definitely evaluate these products, start a trial, but then contact us when you want to actually start integrating them together, because there's, I think, a lot of sort of pitfalls that you can get into when you start integrating apps together, and to make sure that you do it the right way. So this is where, at step 3, it's like definitely reach out and talk to us, and sort of build a relationship with the folks here at Agility and with FormStack to kind of start planning out how your solution can really work for you, especially if you're in an industry like healthcare or you have an IT department that has a bunch of questions. Then we can kind of get all this started and understand, like, you've evaluated the product, it's going to solve your needs, but actually how we're going to implement that solution. This is the process that I like to do because I think people really like to try before they buy, and they really like to have a bit of a consultative process before they make that final commitment. And Zach, you talk about partners. Partners usually get involved in this process. It's around somewhere here as well too, right?
Yeah. Again, great partner community, and anyone looking for that assistance, there's a great network of partners to choose from. Awesome.
So yeah, I mean, obviously diving into the website to kind of get started on these and sort of reading a little bit about more of the partner community, of the actual developer community that can help you to build your solution to get you your marketing team that kind of rhythm that you want. So this is a good path, 4 steps to get started. Now I'm going to kind of throw it over to you, Zach, because these are your
Yeah.
slides, and but I wanted to give you the opportunity to really talk about the FormStack platform and some of the benefits and maybe some of the things that people might not know about it yet.
Yeah, it's funny because the name FormStack, you think forms, and just here to say like, hey, once you start that FormStack trial, there's other things to be thinking about. You know, the form is usually just the beginning, right? It's, you know, what happens. We like to ask, you know, what happens after you collect that data? Where does that data need to end up? You mentioned, you know, the MailChimp or Salesforce examples. We can bring data into those systems, or hundreds of other, you know, pre-built integrations for bringing form data into systems. Another thing, you know, with the advent of, you know, coming out of the pandemic and just more kind of digital processes, anytime that website is kicking off a digital process, I gave the example of, you know, customer enrollment, maybe, you know, waiver forms, onboarding, anything that requires like interaction, generation of a document, digital signature. You know, those are all things FormStack's going to help with further downstream. Right. And the reason we wrap workflows around that is that's another way to think about forms. Is maybe there's a form kicked off from a website interaction, Joel, but then maybe that's getting routed to somebody internally who is kind of reviewing that and enhancing it, adding to it. You know, workflow, multi-step forms, multiple stakeholders. That's where the workflow functionality and efficiencies come into play. And this is an area where a lot of investment from our team, a lot more product releases, you know, coming out soon that take that even to kind of new levels.
Right. Yeah. So because there's a lot that can happen after somebody signs up. And I'm thinking of just in my own experience when you're signing up to, you know, like you sign up on a website to start using a service, and yeah, maybe there's a waiver or something else that I have to actually sign and review. I'm going to get emailed that. So FormStack can actually help you build those processes as well. Is that what you're saying as part of that, Zach?
Absolutely. Hit the nail on the head.
Awesome. Okay. So that's a high level overview. And then, so there's like, this is kind of splitting FormStack, the offering into kind of 3 different areas, right?
Yeah. And these are independent modular products, using that word modular again. So forms, you know, drag and drop form builder, the heart of what Joel and I have been talking about today. Documents, data-driven documents, which could be driven by inputs from that web form or other data sources. Right. We have an entire kind of product that is purely just taking data, I should say, from a CRM like Salesforce and generating like data-driven dynamic documents like proposals, quotes, work orders, etc. And then FormStack Sign, well, that could be automated from a document that's generated from FormStack Documents, or standalone FormStack Sign. You can log into FormStack Sign, upload a document for digital signature. FormStack Sign is essentially a way more practical, easier software to use than some of the kind of heavier, more complex digital signature products out there. So FormStack Sign, great product for digital signature.
Really cool. Yeah, I only really knew about the forms side of the business. Didn't realize that the documents and sign are these things that have come about and really started to really evolve and mature in recent months and years.
Joel, you're a partner. Jump onto FormStack. I'll get you a complimentary partner license. I'm sure you are collecting digital signatures on documents, so you would love FormStack Sign. And yes, the suite is evolving and continues to be kind of integrated in powerful ways. And again, more to come. You'll see a lot of FormStack product news just over the next few days and weeks, and a lot of good stuff coming there.
Right. This is one of the cool things that I love about composable architectures is that people get to choose their vendors. So they can have headless CMS, they can have a form provider. They're not locked into a certain vendor. And when you have somebody like FormStack, you guys are innovating and coming up with new stuff, and there's cool announcements coming out. You can learn about this stuff and then get into that as part of your ecosystem. And I know that for my own brain, I've had so many experiences with things like, well, my son plays football and he goes to football camps. And every time there's a camp, there's like, hey, fill out this camp's form, sign the waiver, email the thing back. and then print it out and bring it. I mean, that process is usually like brutal. I just think this solution like that could make, and I've done all kinds of processes that are kind of like that, and programming them is really hard. But correct me if I'm wrong, Zach, you could pretty much put all this together without really having to write either much or any code potentially.
That's correct. Yeah. No code solutions. I mean, some of our products, well, can be low code, but it's either no code, like all configuration, or possibly low code if you're wanting to do, something custom on top of that, like a JavaScript interaction on a web form is an example of that.
Yeah. And then everything's API driven, so that if you want to integrate it into your process as an automated way, then you can totally do that as well. So that's pretty exciting sort of suite of group of things that you can do here.
Yeah. And just bringing it to life with some visuals. Again, you can go onto formstack.com to see it for yourself, but drag and drop truly form builder using templates, having forms good to go within seconds of signing up for an account, but also being able to customize and build your own forms in that drag and drop method that you're seeing there.
Right.
And then documents. Cool. Yeah. Documents is data-driven, dynamic, rules-driven documents. Really love this because you can imagine, let's say I've got a contract, but there's different content that should appear based on the state that the individual customer is from. I want to have a rule that, varies that content based on that state. Data-driven documents driven from, like you said, could be, again, from that form, but it could also be just from any data source that you define.
Right. Yeah. So if this is part of your normal business workflow, creating these documents, automatically as part of this automated workflow can now, like, this is a way to literally scale your business with one process, right? Because creating documents is probably the worst and most error-prone part of almost any process. So this is a pretty exciting offering right here. And then group that with Sign to be able to sign documents as well, right?
Yep. And this is the FormStack Sign product we were talking about. And similar UI, drag and drop, fields, rules, multi-step routing. Text to sign is a very popular feature. Save a ton of time if you want to just text out a dynamic link for someone to be able to sign right on the phone. That's increased response rates and conversion rates on signature significantly when customers use that feature.
Awesome. Yeah, that's cool. And I can see how, especially in like verticals like healthcare, legal, things like that, having these this kind of a compliant system that kind of works in the back end to enable your team to be able to create and to have these workflows scaled out, really, really powerful. And it all starts with having a composable architecture where you put these things together and have them work as part of your overall business processes. This is awesome stuff. So yeah, we've got forms. Now this is for Salesforce. So these are specific versions or just sort of integrations that you've got for Salesforce?
It is. Forms for Salesforce is a second offering from FormStack that is native to Salesforce. So that if you're building a form directly on the Salesforce data model, you do that. Now you can take that form and embed that into a web page. So it work a little differently from the app you've built, but if a customer was using Salesforce, FormStack for Salesforce, Agility CMS, they'd still be able to use embed code on their web page to collect data. And then documents for Salesforce would be the use case of I'm generating documents dynamically from data, in my CRM, like quotes, proposals, etc.
Okay. Yeah. So a highly tuned kind of version of FormStack of your offerings that works specifically well with Salesforce.
Exactly. Which, given the size of the Salesforce ecosystem, the mid-market, it's been a really effective ecosystem and community for us to be part of. Right.
Yeah. And I think that one of the interesting things that I know from my experience with Salesforce is that it's definitely one of the de facto standards, especially for enterprise companies to use as CRM. But what tends to happen is the processes that get the setup around Salesforce are kind of set it and forget it. And then it doesn't evolve as quickly. So things like forms and documents for Salesforce, this could allow your marketing team to get a lot more of that rhythm back in terms of working with that data to get it a little bit more alive in terms of the process. That's my take on it off the top of my head.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Awesome. Well, we're at our time here, and Zach, this has been great chance to discuss all this stuff. Definitely, if you want to connect with Zach, there's his LinkedIn address. We'll throw that up. We'll throw a bunch of different connections and links into the chat. And thanks for joining today. Thanks for joining us. You folks tuning in to watch this webinar, either live or recorded version of this. But also thank Zach for helping me out today and sort of understanding more about what FormStack can do as part of a composable architecture with Agility CMS. Yeah, and
wasn't quite sure. The best next step. That's why I just threw up LinkedIn there.
Sure.
Zach ZAK Pines. If you want to connect, mention you saw me on the Agility CMS webinar. Get connected. Answer any questions you have. We can continue the conversation over there on LinkedIn.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. And definitely, if you want to reach out to Agility as well, we can help get connected with the FormStack folks and make sure that we can continue the, Zach was saying, continue that conversation and start moving things forward and help you get some rhythm in your marketing team to empower your website and increase that conversion process. Thanks a lot for joining. This has been great. Zach, thanks for coming along, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Great to see everybody. Thanks, Joel.